Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's really hard to write a book for teenagers without some of your philosophy coming through. I mean,
Right.
there is, in a funny way, I mean, so often I get the email that says, oh, Uglies, it's the best book I ever read, blah, 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 age 12. And I was
Right.
like, you haven't read Charlotte's Web? But I think you are getting, when you write for, like, especially 12-year-olds, you're getting a bigger share of their brain. They haven't read, you've read 1,000 books or 10,000 books, but a kid maybe has only read 20 books so far. And so I think you have a certain duty of care to not be, to think about what you're doing. But I mean, I think World War I is really sort of the war where everybody said war is really crazy and stupid. It's the moment when, all the ideas of valor and cavalry charges and sort of that bravery would see you through and it's a test of manliness, all those ideas just got put to shame because, no matter how brave you are, if the other guy has a machine gun, you're just dead. Yeah. And so, the machine gun is part of that those two words put together was a new thing. And it's just the idea that, that mechanical things can just crush the human spirit and can sort of, that all the valor and all that stuff was kind of bogus. And I think, so some of that comes through. And certainly at the beginning, Alec is very sort of, we clankers will defeat the Darwinists and is a bit more militant than he ultimately winds up to be. Especially because he's kind of, he feels responsible for the war. Because in my reality, his parents were sort of killed because of the whole succession problem that he causes. So he starts to feel a level of personal responsibility that, anti-war is not a real subtle message, but it slowly grows on his mind.
Oh, there's throughout your books, and I love that you use the word bogus because you use that a
No,
lot.
right.
I just got done, the uglies, the pretties, the extras, and I absolutely love that series. I thought it was fantastic. And I find it so interesting that in a lot of these books you do write about identity is not set for a lot of these people. And you said in Leviathan you have this girl pretending to be a boy, and really there's a lot of fluidity there. There's a lot of movement in who I am and who I'm going to become.
Well, I think it's the condition that everybody's in when they're younger, and some people lose it and some people don't. I mean, people think that when they become adult, they think they're gaining identity, but what they're really doing is losing fluidity. And I think that's why it's fun to write for teenagers and fun to write in the YA as a genre, whether your audience is necessarily teenager or adult, is the feeling that that's the time of your life when you are most, when you're dealing with, in a funny way, really philosophical problems and really basic problems like how do I find out if a girl likes me or if a boy likes me? That's really, really simple stuff, but at the same time it's really philosophical. Like, why am I here? Like, what is the point of my life or of anybody's life? And I agree that Darren's story is particularly interesting because she's a heroine who really is a little bit like Tally, in that she really wants to be able to do anything, but she, unlike Tally, lives in a world where she's not allowed to. And as she puts it, her aunts are always trying to stuff her into skirts. And so this is her only way of escaping, is to go up to service. I mean, another thing that's cool about that era is that it was probably the last time when positions of great responsibility were thrust on teenagers. I mean, 11-year-olds worked in factories. People got married when they were quite young. There were midshipmen. You could join the Navy when you were 15 or 16 and be an officer, actually, command a ship. If all the officers got killed, you could have a 15-year-old in charge, as long as he was well born. So there is a different, so what it is, the teenagers really hadn't been invented yet, but they were right at the beginning. It's right at the beginning of that time of realizing that adolescence is different than other parts of life. So that's kind of interesting.
Usually when I talk to YA authors, I try to talk to them about their own childhood and growing up and relate that a little bit to the fiction that they write now as adults.
Sure.
That's a little problematic with you because you write these fantastical worlds that don't really exist or don't exist yet. Theoretically 300 years, we don't know what's going on in the future. But they're really, do you have any connection to your own childhood with the characters you write today? Are there any universal experiences that you find yourself going back to, even if it's, in the future in an alternate world?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably my one very likely reason that I write YA is that my parents moved around an awful lot. Like, I didn't go to the same school more than 2 years in a row until high school. I went to 3 different first grades, I went to a couple different second grades, and then I just moved around once per year. And it had to do with my dad's job and a certain wanderlust that my parents had. But and they promised every time that it would never happen again.
Oh, no, we're staying here. This is home from now on, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. You don't have to move again. But that sort of first day of school for me was always, oh, here we go again. Mm-hmm. I'm in a new place, in a new town. And I think, that's it's a very common YA trope, actually, the new kid in town. It's what happens in Twilight. It's what happens in in Uglies, it's kind of happening because they're right at that threshold of life, moving to new pretty town. Or in the case of Tally, it's about your friends leaving you behind when they move away. I was talking about it to a friend of mine, and I think one of the tragedies of being a teenager is that you have really strong connections with your friends, and you can't just, it's not like a 5-year-old, you can pick them up and they'll make new friends. You're almost an adult in that, your place is really something that you think is yours, but you don't have any power yet. If dad or mom gets a new job when you're 15, you just have to leave town, and you really don't have a choice. So it's right at that cusp between, you're not young enough to just completely bounce back like a 10-year-old, but you're not old enough to say, no, I'm staying here, mom and dad. You guys can just go ahead without me.
Although that is the fantasy, right?
Yeah, exactly.